An acquisition means one person directly or indirectly acquires or agree to acquire shares or voting rights in or control over a target company. Please note this carefully again. An acquisition is acquisition of shares or voting rights in or control over a target company. So, an acquirer, who can be anyone, a natural person or a company, can acquire a company by three modes. Number one, the acquiring of shares, or number two, acquiring of the voting rights, or number three, acquiring of the control. An important aspect where the corporate lawyers are involved in the deals are when we advise on the aspect of control. Under the laws, control includes number one, the right to appoint majority of the directors or to control the management or policy decisions directly or indirectly of the target company. This could be through the shareholding or management rights or shareholders agreement or voting agreements or arrangement in any other manner. The second meaning of control, that is, to control the management or policy decisions directly or indirectly of the target company, is a very loose and a fluid concept. It enlarges the scope and domain of what one means by the term acquisition. We can change or can have rights as per the agreement, such as the shareholders agreement, by virtue of which we can exercise control over the management of the target. We can then decide the target's policies, and thereby we acquire control in a company. But then again, we can also acquire control by acquiring shares. As such, statutorily, there are no prescribed number of shares to be acquired in order to exercise control over the target company. But by acquiring shares and or the voting rights, if an acquirer acquires 50% or more of the shares or voting rights, it has the control over the company's management and affairs. At the same time, note, there is a view that if a shareholder has 26% shares in a company, then it has a right to block any of the spatial resolution of the company. This is where the 3/4 of the majority is required in order for the resolution to pass through. These are also called negative control right. Therefore, the way that corporate practice and the law has developed, we now have controls of two types. Positive control, this is where the shareholding is more than 50%, and the shareholders that has more than 50% shares has complete authority over the working and operations of the company, including its management and corporate affair rights. And the second kind of control is the negative control. In a negative control, a shareholder has a certain clear management rights. Now, these rights are like approving the balance sheets, profit and loss statements, appointing the members of the board of directors, etc. Now, these rights are gained through a shareholders agreement or a shareholding of at least 26%, through which it is indirectly control the management and affairs of the company. As such, there is no clarity in terms of black letter law or a Supreme Court judgment as to the true and precise meaning of control. This has an effect on how we define what an acquisition is as well. I have seen cases, and there are several, where an acquirer controls or acquires less than 50% shares in the target, and it still enjoys control and the management and affairs of the target company by virtue of the shareholders' agreement. For example, in 2013, Etihad Airways acquired about 24% stakes in Jet Airways. The Competition Commission of India held that through this, Etihad acquired only 24% stake. It has control rights. Now, this 24% stake, which is much lower than 50%. With this 24% stake, Etihad controls the operations and management of Jet Airways. It has powers to appoint Jet Airways CEO and CFO, block future mergers and acquisitions. However, the view of what control means is duly limited to what CCI thinks. This may not be, or in fact this is not, true for the regulators such as SEBI. Even the courts, whose understanding about the term control is that an acquirer has to acquire more than 50% shares or voting rights in order to be in a position of control of the target company. Anything less than 50% shares in the target will not lead to a position of control. Acquisitions can work out in two different ways: stock acquisitions and an asset sale or slump sale. Now, let's take them up one by one.